Welcome to the Books Bible Study. Good morning. Good morning. We are on Genesis chapter 30. We were way past 11. We're in Genesis chapter 30, well past the halfway point. So hopefully if you were behind, you have caught up with us. If not, please go back and watch. So here we are, verse 1, Genesis chapter 30. Now when Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, Rachel envied her sister and said to Jacob, "Give me children or else I die." So envy is not a light emotion. It means that you have strong desires for what someone else has to the point of bitterness and even hatred, right? So her envy is tied to her worth in a culture where women who did not have children were looked upon as less than, right? And then also these women wanted to participate, of course, in the blessings of Abraham, right? For him to be a great nation. So Leah wants the affection from Jacob and Rachel wants the children. So they each have something that the other wants, right? So verse 2 says, "And Jacob's anger was aroused against Rachel, and he said, 'Am I in the place of God, who has withheld from you the fruit of your womb?'" Verse 3, so she said, "Here is my maid Bilhah. Go into her, and she will bear a child on my knees, that I also may have children by her." So this is Sarah Jr., I guess, being impatient, making moves before God had a chance to do it, right? Verse 4. So then she gave him Bilhah, her maid, as wife, and Jacob went into her. Verse 5. And Bilhah conceived and bore Jacob a son. Verse 6. Then Rachel said, "God has judged my case, and he has also heard my voice and given me a son." Therefore she called his name Dan. Verse 7. And Rachel's maid Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. Verse 8. Then Rachel said, "With great wrestlings I have wrestled with my sister, and indeed I have prevailed." So she called his name Naphtali. Now they're in a contest of who can have the most children now. Verse 9. So when Leah saw that she had stopped bearing, because remember last chapter, after she had Judah, she didn't have any more children. So when Leah saw that she had stopped bearing, she took Zilpah, her maid, and gave her to Jacob as wife. Verse 10. And Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a son. Verse 11. Then Leah said, "A troop comes." So she called his name Gad. Verse 12. And Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a second son. Verse 13. Then Leah said, "I am happy, for the daughters will call me blessed." So she called his name Asher. Verse 14. Now Reuben went in the days of wheat harvest and found mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes." So the reason that Rachel wanted these berries, these mandrakes, were because they were said to help with conception, like an aphrodisiac. But remember what Jacob said in verse 2. He said, "It is God who opens and closes the womb." So now Rachel wants these berries to help her conceive. Verse 15. But she said to her, is it a small matter that you have taken away my husband? Would you take away my son's mandrakes also?" And Rachel said, "Therefore he will lie with you tonight for your son's mandrake." So Jacob gets sold for some berries. Okay, verse 16. When Jacob came out of the field in the evening, Leah went out to meet him and said, "You must come in to me, for I have surely hired you with my son's mandrakes." And he lay with her that night. I don't know. I think this is the first form of prostitution going on right here. Verse 17. And God listened to Leah, and she conceived and bore Jacob a fifth son. So Rachel took the mandrakes, but Leah lay with Jacob that night and bore Jacob a fifth son. So she had stopped conceiving, but then they made conceive, and now Leah is conceiving again. Verse 18. Leah said, God has given me my wages because I have given my maid to my husband. So she called his name Issachar. Verse 19. Then Leah conceived again and bore Jacob a sixth son. Verse 20. And Leah said, God has endowed me with a good endowment. Now my husband will dwell with me because I have borne him 6 sons. So she called his name Zebulun. Verse 21. Afterwards she bore a daughter and called her name Dinah. So now she's back to, see, after Judah, she was praising the Lord, and now she's back to conceiving for the affection of her husband. Verse 22. Then God remembered Rachel, and God listened to her and opened her womb. Right? So now, okay, so was it the mandrakes, or they don't say how much time has passed. Clearly it's 9 months between the children. So she traded the mandrakes for Jacob so that Leah could go into Jacob. Well, Jacob could go into Leah, but Leah started bearing again. And then after Leah had more children, then Rachel's womb was open. So I don't know. Verse 23. And it says, and she conceived a boy son and said, God has taken away my reproach. Verse 24. So she called his name Joseph and said, the Lord shall add to me another son. Verse 25. And it came to pass when Rachel had borne Joseph that Jacob said to Laban, send me away that I may go to my own place and to my country. And so remember, I think it was chapter 28 where Jacob told the Lord, like, as long as you're my Lord, as long as you bring me back to my land, you know, you will be my Lord. So now Jacob has been there a while. He has wives, children. So he says to Laban, send me away that I may go to my own place and to my own country. Verse 26. He says, give me my wives and my children for whom I have served you, and let me go. For you know my service which I have done for you. So he's already fulfilled his time. I think he's well past his time. So all of these children that he had, he was still working for Laban. Verse 27. And Laban said to him, please stay, if I have found favor in your eyes, for I have learned by experience that the Lord has blessed me for your sake. Verse 28. Then he said, name me your wages, and I will give it. Verse 29. So Jacob said to him, you know how I have served you and how your livestock has been with me. Verse 30. For what you had before I came was little, and it has increased to a great amount. The Lord has blessed you since my coming. And now, when shall I also provide for my own house? Verse 31. So he said, what shall I give you? And Jacob said, you shall not give me anything. If you will do this thing for me, I will again feed and keep your flocks. Verse 32. He says, let me pass through all your flock today, removing from there all the speckled and spotted sheep, all the brown ones among the lambs, and the spotted and speckled among the goats, and these shall be my wages. Okay. So Jacob seems to have a plan as he prepares to leave Laban's house. So we don't know at this point if this plan was solely something he concocted or if he was being led or instructed by God to do this thing. Okay. So verse 33, he says, so my righteousness will answer for me in time to come. When the subject of my wages comes before you, everyone that is not speckled and spotted among the goats and brown among the lambs will be considered stolen if it is with me. Okay. 34. And Laban said, oh, that it were according to your word. 35. So he removed that day the male goats that were speckled and spotted, all the female goats that were speckled and spotted, everyone that had some white in it, and all the brown ones among the lambs, and gave them into the hands of his sons. So he gives Jacob all the spotted, speckled, and brown livestock, right? Verse 33. Then he put 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob fed the rest of Laban's flocks. 37. Now Jacob took for himself rods of green poplar and of the almond and chestnut trees, peeled white strips in them, and exposed the white which was in the rods. Verse 38. And the rods which he had peeled, he set before the flocks in the gutters and the watering troughs where the flocks came to drink, so that they should conceive when they came to drink. So these rods that Jacob had peeled apparently caused the flocks to be interested in conception when they came to drink. So again, we don't know if this is knowledge that he'd already observed from working with these animals, or if this is knowledge that God, or knowledge or wisdom that God has given him, so that he could cause these spotted and speckled ones to produce, right? Verse 39. So the flocks conceived before the rods, and the flocks brought forth streaked, speckled, and spotted. Verse 40. Then Jacob separated the lambs and made the flocks face toward the street, and all the brown of the flock of Laban. But he put his own flocks by themselves and did not put them with Laban's flock. Verse 41. And it came to pass, whenever the stronger livestock conceived, that Jacob placed the rods before the eyes of the livestock in the gutters, that they might conceive among the rods. Verse 42. But when the flocks were feeble, he did not put them in. So the feebler were Laban's, and the stronger were Jacob's. Verse 43. Thus the man became exceedingly prosperous, and had large flocks, female and male servants, and camels and donkeys. So Jacob is a patient man, right? He is willing to wait. He is willing to work. He's willing to plan to see a thing through, right? To get what he wants. We already see what he did for Rachel, right? And he's still working for her father, but on his way out, he's making sure that he has what he needs to take care of his wives and his children, right? So he's coming out of this thing more prosperous than he was when he went in. But it doesn't really say that he went with servants and all of that when he left his parents' house to flee Esau, because Esau wanted to kill him for taking his blessing. So this is Jacob's journey with Rachel and his children, which we will find out later, that these are the 12 tribes of Israel, right? Of course, it's the promised seed. So let's keep up with what's going on in Jacob's life. As we spoke about last chapter, about the beautiful women who were not having children at first. And so we're starting to see, like with Sarah, with Rebecca, with Rachel, that there was some tensions there, where God, I believe, humbled them by not allowing their wombs to be open immediately, right? So there needed to be some, because if you've read the story about Hannah, she was more humble, right, than they were. And so they're kind of doing things to cause it to happen instead of waiting for that appointed time, right, for God to do a thing. And so let's be patient. Let's wait for God to do the thing that he said he was going to do. And then also making sure that we are not mistreating people until that time happens, right? So if there's a thing that you want that you have not been given yet, be patient. There may be some humbling that you need to do. So let's wait on the will of God to come forth in our lives. And so we will continue with chapter 31 between now and 7 p.m. Go ahead, catch up on the chapters that you missed so you can know who we're talking about, where they come from, right? Where they're going, what God has said, what he's fulfilling. All of these stories are important. All of these places are important. How their lives play out is important. And another thing that we said was how each chapter should bring a measure of revelation to you about yourself, about your own situations, right? So we're not just reading it for historical purposes, We're reading it, number one, to find out God's character, to find out what he will do, what he won't do, because some things we think God won't do, but it's absolutely him working in it, right? And then also realizing that nothing's going to stop his plan. So if he says, you know, your nation will be great, okay, just because you create an Ishmael doesn't mean you get the blessings. Yes, you'll have many, Ishmael had 12 princes, right? They had their own nations, but the blessings of prosperity and things like that, the covenant with God was with Isaac. And we see with Jacob, he's a little trickster, but that doesn't, God's word still is going to go forth whether or not human manipulation is involved or not, right? So you can try to manipulate it, try to fix the system, but God's word still will come to pass. So it may not be you he used, but he'll use somebody from your lineage, right? Somebody's willing to do the will of God. And so we want to be the ones that is found doing his will, right? So that we can see the promise. We don't want to leave this earth without seeing the promises of God, because the things that he promises us here, they're not for heaven, right? There's just worship all the time for him in heaven. There's nobody we need to save in heaven. There's nobody that needs to see his glory in heaven. We need to do that here, right? So the promises that he makes for us is for us to receive here, okay? Once we get to the eternal place, he's getting all the glory, all the honor. That's eternal, right? Here, we're trying to get people to make the decision to spend eternity with him, right? So all of those promises that he's given us, we want to see them fulfilled. We don't want to die not seeing the promises of God fulfilled in our lives and the lives of people that are influenced by us. So God bless you all, and I will see you all for chapter 31. God bless.